Morning, everyone.
Good morning, Rabbi.
We are learning Mishna Sotah, Perek Zayin, Chapter 7, Mishna Aleph, Mishna 1. Now, we learned a while ago that the Kohen reads certain verses, certain psukim, to the Sotah, to the woman, who is, before she drinks the water, he reads certain verses to the Torah, from the Torah to her. The verses that say that if she didn't commit adultery, she'll be found innocent by the waters. If she is guilty, there'll be repercussions. There'll be repercussions from that. And clearly, the Torah is talking in the Hebrew language. Okay, the Mishnah here says, how about the Mishnah discussion is going to be? What if he tells it to her in a different language? Doesn't tell it to her, and he doesn't tell her the words of the Torah in the wording of the Torah, but he says in a different language. So elu ne'amarim b'chaloshen. These are the things that can be said in any language. The first thing is parasha Sotah, the section of Sotah that in which we say that the Kohen says to the Sotah, that can be said to her in any language. Now, first of all, when we start off and we say that the following list are things that can be said in any language, the person has to understand the language that's being said in. Meaning, if you're going to speak, tell it to them in Russian, right, and understand Russian, then it doesn't work. Typically.
No purpose in it.
So now, so the point is that if once you're switching over from the language, when you're switching over to another language, it's got to be a language that's understood. That's the rule. So now, Parsha Sotah, the section of Sotah. Okay, so here in the notes they bring down very interesting. That we derive this from the words of the Torah, but the way they bring down the derivation is like this: the law is derived from the phrase. The Torah says, "He shall say to the woman." The words "to the woman" imply that the Kohen's words must enter her mind. He must therefore use a language she understands, whether it is Hebrew or not. So the point is that the Torah is implying when it says that the Kohen says these words to the woman, that she understands what he's saying. And therefore, if it needs to be in whatever other language it may be, so fine. Because let's remember, you could theoretically have a man and a woman living outside of Israel, right? He warns her not to go into seclusion. She goes to seclusion, and he's got to bring her now to Israel, to the Beis HaMikdash, to go through the process. Well, what if she doesn't understand Hebrew? So the Torah said that. So the Mishnah is saying that the Torah tells us that he has to say it in whatever language that she can understand. Okay, that's the first example. The next example is vidui meiser, literally translated the declaration or the confession of the tithes. Now, let me read to you what this means. A person who owns produce that grew in Eretz Yisrael must remove certain portions, right? The truma goes to the Kohen, the meiser, a tenth, goes to the Levi, etc., from each year's crop and treat them as instructed by the Torah. He has to fulfill all these obligations before the Pesach, of the 4th and 7 years of the 7-year Shemitah cycle. Okay, so he's got to by Pesach of year 4, he has to have given all the past years. Theoretically, he could separate these grains, and they're sitting in his refrigerator for whatever it may be. They could be lasting for a while. But the point is, each year's must be given to the Kohen, etc., and it's got to be done by the Pesach of the 4th year. On the last day of that Pesach, a person reads verses from Devarim, which states that he separated the portions and dealt with them as required, and he asks for God's blessing. This statement is known as vidui meiser, the declaration of meiser, or literally the word vidu means the confession. Now the Mishnah teaches that one may make the statement in any language he understands. And here too, there's a derivation from the Torah that you can do it that way. And therefore, when a person makes a declaration, it can be made in any language. Okay, that's the second example. The third example is Kriya Shema, the reading of Shema. If you don't understand what you're saying in Hebrew, you can say it in a different language. I don't know if that's the practice that people do, because the halacha, as we're going to see, is that, let me read to you here first. So how do we know by Shema you can say it in any language? Because what does Shema Yisrael mean?
Think about it.
Shema means more than hear. Shema means that the word Shema means that you should understand.
Absorb it.
Right? You should absorb it. There's a message here. There's something you should be accepting. Okay? So therefore, you could go ahead and say Shema in any language. It's got to be, you got to understand what you're saying, right? If you read it in Russian, you have no idea what you're saying, you're not going to get the mitzvah. However, Hebrew, is different. When it's permitted, and it is even recommended to say the Shema in Hebrew, even if one does not understand it. Isn't that interesting? Even if you don't understand the Hebrew, if you can read it, you should be reading it in Hebrew, even if you don't understand. Now, there's a halacha by Shema that, there are, and the very least, the first pasuk, Shema Yisrael, Hashem Elokeinu Hashem Echad, you need to understand what you're saying. But the rest of it, even if you wouldn't halacha, there's different opinions, but the rest of it, if you're reading it in Hebrew, even if you don't understand, it's okay. It's permitted to do that, and they say here it's even recommended. A different language already, you're going to have to understand it. Okay, next. So far we have, last example is Kriya Shema. Next is Utfila, which means prayer, Shemoneh Esrei. Shemoneh Esrei can also be said in any language that at least you understand. Now, let me read you how they explained it here. A verse is not needed to teach that one may pray in any language. Like everything else had a source. Do we have a source for prayer? So they bring down here from Rashi, you don't need a source. Since prayer is most effective when made in a heartfelt manner, right? Prayer is most effective when you have kavanah, when you have focus and feeling. One may use any language that he knows, even if it is not Hebrew. Nevertheless, listen to this. Other languages are allowed only when praying with a congregation. A person who says the Shemoneh Esrei in private must use Hebrew. Saying the Shemoneh Esrei in Hebrew is a valid fulfillment of the obligation, regardless of whether one understands it. Like you said before by Shema. Even if you don't understand the Hebrew language, but you said Shema in the Hebrew language, you have fulfilled your mitzvah. I'm sorry, if you said Shemoneh Esrei in the Hebrew language and you didn't understand what you're saying, you still fulfill it. It's just that, here too, the first blessing of Shemoneh Esrei, you need to know what it means. You need to know what you're saying to fulfill the mitzvah. But the rest of it, even if you don't understand what you're saying, you have fulfilled your obligation. And again, this whole halacha of davening Shemoneh Esrei in another language is only while davening in a congregation, which sounds like the congregation can be davening in Hebrew. But if you're with a tzibur, with a congregation, then you could say the Shemoneh Esrei in any language. Okay, next. U'birchas hamazon. Okay, the benching, the grace after meals. That too, if you could say it, one may say Birchas Hamazon in whatever language, he can sincerely bless Hashem and thank him for his food. Okay, you can do that. Again, is there there is a preference for Hebrew, but a person could do it in any language that he wants. Okay, next. Now this guy's a little more complicated. Ushvuas ha'edus, the oath of testimony, that also can be administered in any language. Ushvuas hapikadon, and the oath of something you are guarding. Now, that means like this. The first example, Shvuas ha'edus, the oath of testimony. Let me read here from the bottom. This law concerns a qualified witness who knows evidence that someone needs in order to win a monetary case in court. If he was asked to testify and falsely swore that he does not know the evidence and later admitted that he lied, he must bring an offering to atone for his false oath. Follow that? You go over to a person and he says, I need you to testify for me in court about a monetary case. And you say, and the person says, I don't know anything. And the person says to him, swear to me that you don't know. He brings him to the court of law, Beis Din, and he says, swear to me that you don't know, that you can't testify. And he swears that he doesn't know anything. And then later on he admits that he lied. So he's got to bring a special sacrifice. The point of the Mishnah here is that when the Mishnah teaches that it makes no difference whether he swore in Hebrew or any other language, meaning when he swore to the fact that he didn't know any testimony, it could be in any language that he swore. It doesn't have to be only in Hebrew. Any language works also to swear that if he swore falsely, admits he's got to bring a sacrifice. That's the example of shua sa'etus. That's what it means, the oath of testimony. Then we have the oath of pikadon, the oath of what you're guarding. Deposit. Pikadon means I leave something by you. I leave something by you to watch it. Now this shua sa'pikadon that we're about to learn about is actually anytime you have somebody else's money. Let me read to you. This law applies to a person who owes money to another or has someone else's property in his possession. For example, he stole it, he found it, or was asked by the owner to take care of it. When asked to pay the money, return the object, I don't have anything. Okay? He falsely swore that he does not owe the money or that he does not have the object. If he later admits that he lied, he must bring an offering and pay a fine. And the Mishnah is telling us that if that oath was made in a language other than Hebrew, that is considered a oath. It's a valid oath. It's the kind of oath that would obligate him to have to bring the sacrifice and to pay the penalty for swearing falsely, to denying that he owes someone else money or that he has in his possession someone else's money. Have a wonderful day and a wonderful Shabbos.
Thank you very much.
What happens if the woman is deaf?